Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program making his return to the show probably for the first time since June. It is Chris Stone from over at Fansided, as well as over at Sporting News. He took my old job over at Sporting News as their draft guy.
I just told you that I took an illicit cab ride back to my hotel so we could do this. So around the United Center, apparently there are pickup zones. So I tried to get an Uber, but I had to walk 2 blocks to get the Uber. But there was a cab right outside. So I just hopped in the cab, which was totally fine. And then the guy was like, do you remember what you paid to get back to your hotel? And so I told him. And he was like, why don't you just pay me that? And I'm going to just shut my meter off so that he doesn't have to pay the cab company. I was like, sure. It's the same price for me either way, so I don't really care.
I'm all in on those janky ass, random cab rides that people take.
Hey, man, gotta hustle.
Yeah, I'm all in on that, man. Chicago's really funky too. I'm not a huge fan of Chicago. I love the architecture. I love so many things about Chicago, but I hate having to take cars in Chicago. Yeah. It is. I think that driving in Chicago is the worst experience I've ever had in my life, and I live in considerably worse in terms of traffic than Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm not. So my kind of hot take is I'm not a big Chicago fan in general, but that's largely because every time that I come here, the weather is totally awful, and today was a rare exception to that. So I warmed up to it a little bit, but the traffic is definitely bad.
Yeah, it's not even it's traffic, but it's I feel like drivers are just crazy. Wild.
Yeah, they're super.
You know what I mean?
On the way back was way crazy.
Yeah. All right. So as people can kind of guess, maybe this podcast is going to be about the Champions Classic, and Chris, given the fact that he was in Chicago and at the United Center, was at the Champions Classic tonight. Chris, what were your overall impressions of the event?
So I really love the Champions Classic. I think it's an awesome early event, and I think that there are some rumors floating around I saw on Twitter that it might open the season next year, which I think is awesome. Because I thought it was really cool the last few years when it was kind of the end point of the 24-hour tip-off marathon, and then it kind of built into these 2 really big games. And this year I thought it was great. I thought we were due for 2 really interesting matchups. Duke, Michigan State definitely delivered. Kansas, Kentucky was the most boring, terrible basketball game that I could have imagined. And I think that pretty much everybody who was there watching it was just we have to get this over with. And that's so 2 terrible. Rowdy fan bases. Kansas and Kentucky fans put Duke and Michigan State fans in terms of just their craziness kind of to shame. And they would get into it for 15, 20-second stretches, but they were just man, this is just bad.
So, yeah, midway through the second half, I tweeted, can we just end this and put Michigan State Duke back out there for another 15 minutes? One of the worst games I think I've ever seen.
What's
in
weird
terms of just ugliness. It was so ugly.
Yeah, it was super ugly. Tons of turnovers, just missed defensive assignments. Nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody knew how to dribble a basketball. And in the first 5 to 10 minutes, Kansas looked really good. Their offense was flowing. They were shooting threes. And I think I tweeted something out about it, and Jonathan Gaboni tweeted something out about it, and both of us just had to eat our words or something because just I don't know what happened. I mean, Kentucky played pretty good defense, and their length obviously bothered Kansas in a lot of ways, but just man, that game went downhill really fast.
I even thought it was kind of shitty in the first half.
I'm only talking first half. We're just early Kansas offense was kind of pretty and fun and flowing and running while Kentucky was getting into the game, and then Kansas started missing threes and started turning the ball over, and just everything was terrible.
Yeah, so these 2 teams combined to shoot a solid 47 for 123. For those of you counting at home, 47 divided by 123, that's a 38% percentage. Not great. Not great. Neither team broke 30%. Neither team broke 67% from the free throw line. No, not a very good night. Not a very good night with Kentucky and Kansas, but it didn't matter because the first game was the best game. The first game, I think, will probably stand up as the best college basketball game of the season by the time that we look back on it and everything is done. Just from a talent perspective, from a pace of play perspective, from an overall and not even like talent, but just the way that the teams played. They played together. They played as a unit. I was surprised to see how developed these two teams were, for having as many young players as they do. Michigan State starts 4 sophomores. Duke starts 4 freshmen. These two teams were pretty much ready to go from Jump Street.
Yeah, it was super fun. I thought both of them played well. You had Grayson's, dynamic performance to kind of stand on. If I have like a criticism, it's that Michigan State's zone offense was just like boring, and the fact that Duke decided to play zone, I think, took away some of the individual matchups everybody was really hopeful to see in that game. Like, I think everybody is interested to see Marvin Bagley, Jaren Jackson. I was really interested to see how Miles Bridges would defend Gary Trent, because Miles Bridges has moved to small forward and Gary Trent was going to run him around some screens and stuff. And like, we just didn't really get as many of those opportunities as I thought we could have.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think from a prospect and scouting perspective, there were some issues in this game that we didn't necessarily learn a crazy amount. But that is what we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about these guys from the perspective of them being NBA prospects. And we'll start with Marvin Bagley, I guess, just because there's not as much to talk about with Bagley. He goes 2 of 4, has 6 rebounds, has 4 points after 10 minutes after getting poked in the eye. You could see on TV that his eye was like, he was literally struggling to like have it open the whole time, that he was on the bench in the second half. After the game, I guess that Duke's coaching staff wasn't necessarily as hyper concerned as they could have been, given that anytime that someone gets like kind of hit in the face, it's a little bit of a scary situation. But what was your impression?
The thing that I always have started, or at least like consistently have taken away from Bagley and watching him in this game and in other games, is just his activity level is so high. And I think that there were some people who had concerns about the motor coming out of high school and stuff, but like, those should not exist at all. He's consistently active. He chases rebounds. He goes and gets balls. He had 5 offensive rebounds in 10 minutes, which is just like patently absurd. And I think that you get flashes of the stuff that makes him such an intriguing NBA prospect. Like, he had that Euro step into a floater at one point, and you're just like, what other guy who's a big man in this draft, or in any draft really, can do that? And I don't know that I think the skills are all there yet, and I shouldn't say I don't know that. They're clearly not all there yet. But there's just like so much intriguing potential that exists with him because of some of the things that he can already do, that it's easy for me to even see him play 10 minutes and kind of get excited, even if those 10 minutes weren't like the most exciting thing in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was pretty enthused by what I saw of Marvin Bagley in this game. Overall, the length of Michigan State didn't necessarily bother him as much as it could have. I know that he did miss a couple of shots in close, but I'm not super concerned about that. There was one play where Jaren Jackson just beasted him and grabbed an offensive rebound and put it back. That stuff's going to happen to a 6'11", 230-pound big man occasionally without elite length, and you're just going to kind of have to live with it. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the motor and on the activity level. He rebounds out of his area all the time. The 5 offensive rebounds in this game were not a joke. He was unbelievable. He always has been unbelievable at chasing misses for his own team. He is a really just special prospect. Time that I see him, and I have not yet to see him where the motor doesn't show up. I think that sometimes he makes poor decisions and tries to do too much on the floor, and like maybe some of that comes from laziness, where he doesn't want to think things through and make the right play. But yeah, anytime I see him, he plays super hard, and
I'll be interested to see what Duke does going forward. I think one of the things Coach K does really well with some of his like best freshmen is put them in positions to succeed on the offensive end. And I kind of go back just to the 2014-15 season, I guess it was, when he had Brandon Ingram and Grayson, and he just like let those two ISO all the time because he knew they had mismatches. And I know that that's like not innovative strategy, but like it worked really well and delivered the super efficient offense. I'm interested to see as the season evolves what Coach K starts to do with Bagley and how he puts him in position to score offensively, assuming that he develops some of those skills that we think he can develop.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that as well. Where do you want to move next? Should we talk about Jaren Jackson? Should we talk about Grayson Allen? Should we talk Trey Duval or Wendell Carter? What are your comments?
We should do Grayson really quick. just because like he had a ridiculous game. He scored 37 points on 20 shots, and that's insane.
Absolutely ridiculous in this game.
Yeah.
He was incredible. 7 for 11 from 3, 8 of 8 from the line. That's the thing that's always been, to me, Grayson's best skill, is his shot-making ability. Both off the catch and off the dribble. Off the catch, he always keeps the ball high, so he has a really, really quick release. And then off the dribble, he's really, really good at his ball pickup and getting the ball up to his shoulder, follow through, and kind of getting excellent rotation on his ball. He has a really pure jump shot off the dribble in a way that some guys don't, as we'll talk about with Trevon Duval soon. So Grayson, to me, his best skill has always been the shot-making ability and his ability to kind of have pro moves to get by people, the way that he turns his shoulders on guys sometimes, the way that he uses his powerful build, to actually get some space. And I am not going to lie to you. Like, I have Grayson, I think, at like number 30 on my big board right now. And I think he's an excellent player. I think he's probably going to end up being something like a first round pick.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I thought that Coach K after the game today said a couple of interesting things. One really interesting thing he said is he felt like he was coaching JJ Redick out there, which is obviously an aggressive comparison and not one that will probably hold up. But the other thing that he said is that over the last couple of years, everybody kind of remembers Grayson from that national championship game as a freshman when he just kind of dominated going to the rim. And he said that one of the things he's noticed is Grayson's developed into a great shooter. And he made sure to emphasize great, not just good. And that's allowed him to shift his game to start with his jump shot and then develop it from there, which I think is a little bit different from how a lot of you have Self and Calipari who are pounded inside, and then when the threes are there, take them. I thought it was interesting and kind of refreshing to hear Coach K say, use your shot making to open up the rest of your game, which for Grayson is important because I think, last year in some of the injuries and stuff we lost, that Grayson's a terrific athlete. And so when he can get some space and get to the rim, he can finish at a really high level because he can just explode vertically. I don't think Grayson is going to be a star NBA player or anything, but I think a lot of people after last year have kind of written him off. And I think some of his early season performances this year have probably suggested that what we saw last year was likely an anomaly produced by injuries or whatever else, maybe a bad fit, Luke Kennard, who knows, but that there's still a useful NBA product that exists in Grayson Allen. And I think that that's exciting because he's fun and people hate him. And that's an enjoyable thing to have in college basketball.
So yeah, Grayson's always a tough one to kind of talk about because I think the injuries definitely played a massive role in his issues last year. He's a guy that you can even just see in the jump shot. He's exploding a little bit higher this year whenever he leaps to go up for a jump shot. He is just a little bit more explosive right now than he was last year. And he suffered both ankle and I think toe injuries last season if you're a 6'4" guard, right? Especially one who generates a lot of his power coming up from his lower half. Yep. So on one hand, I do think that is to blame. On the other hand, I don't want to absolve some of the, high emotion play that he had. I mean, the dude was fucking out here tripping dudes.
I don't mean
for no reason. And you know what? To play this redemption Grayson Allen story. And look, I think that Grayson's probably a really good kid. I don't know. I've never met Grayson Allen other than kind of in scrums in locker rooms. But I get the impression he's probably a really good kid who just made some really poor choices. But at the end of the day, I do think that is part of the story of Grayson Allen. We can't brush over that and try and make it this positive narrative.
Yep, I definitely agree. He's done some messed up stuff. I think everybody's kind of on pins and needles to see if he does something goofy this year like that. But so far, the story's just kind of been that he's been really great at basketball this year, and he's been fun.
Yeah, and I hope he stays this fun. He's a really fun player to watch when he's on his game. Let's go ahead and move on to the other couple of Duke guys here. Trevon is the guy most worth discussing. He had 17 points, 10 assists, only 3 turnovers, and he had 6 steals in this game as well, playing at the top of that zone. Michigan State made some really just piss-poor passes at the top of that zone. there's like, I get that Trevon is super long. He's 6'3" with a 6'10" wingspan. He's super athletic. He's very, very quick twitch. It's hard to kind of get around him, but you can't be as late State was, and I think that that's where the defense comes into play. In terms of his offense, though, what did you like? What did you not like?
Sure. The place where I'll start what I liked is he threw a couple of passes that just like popped off the page to me, where I was like, oh, that was really impressive.
Yep.
Like he had one, I think, in transition where he kind of just like caught it with his right hand and immediate flicked it across the lane. And I was just like, freshman point guards don't really do that. He had another similar touch pass somewhere, and then I think he was the person who threw that like crazy outlet pass late in the game at one point. The one from the right side of the court all the way down to the other left side. It's like Grayson, I think. I don't remember. But I just remember him throwing like 3 or 4 passes during the game, and I was just like, that's interesting and really nice to see, and something that I've seen a little bit of previously. Like he threw that one behind the back pass to Marvin Bagley in their last game. And so I was really impressed in terms of just like good takeaways with his feel for the game and how well he kind of passed and was quick in making those decisions, which I think is something that's really awesome. I think if we're talking about stuff that we didn't like about him offensively, it's just like obviously the jump shot, which is just like doesn't exist. 0 for 4 from 3, takes like in a lot of cases isn't even willing to take the jump shot when it's given to him, which, you know, given that he's probably not going to make it, is totally understandable, I guess. But like he just doesn't have a jump shot, and that's going to limit him in terms of what he can be in the NBA, because he's not an elite creator at the rim like, say, De'Aaron Fox was. He just doesn't have that quickness to blow by guys like Fox did. And so I think that that's going to be a concern, and he's going to have to develop some kind of jumper, whether it's just like something in the mid-range, but it's clearly not there yet.
So to me, the biggest thing to like about Trevon Duval is the way that he pushes in transition. Yeah. He is going to get his team 6 to 8 points a game that other point guards would not get simply by being athletic out in transition, having great vision out in the open floor, and having the explosiveness and length that he has around the rim. Excellent, exceptional transition player. I am pretty worried about the half-court offensive game.
Yeah.
No jump shot to speak of. He goes 7 of 20 from the field, so just an extremely inefficient game. 3 of 7 from the foul line. He really just can't shoot from the perimeter right now, and that's a significant concern. I'm also going to be interested to see the way that his finishing kind of ends up at the end of the year. See a lot of kind of early Derrick Rose there. He's not as good as what Derrick Rose was when Derrick Rose like came out of Memphis and could really, really push the ball out in transition and was a way better passer than what he got credit for. Like there were seasons where Derrick Rose averaged like 8 assists a game with Chicago. I kind of see that skill. I'm not 100% convinced with Duval. The other thing with him that scares me a little bit is that his handle gets really loose from time to time. There was one play where he tried to like execute this kind of obscene like behind the back through the legs move, lost the ball, kind of gained it back like in a crowd, and then went up for what I think was like a left-handed layup at the rim. That is just kind of not going to, just a lot more reactive. He did only have 3 turnovers in this game, and I think that that's a pretty good sign so far this year. I think he's at like 30 assists and I think 4 turnovers or something like that. That's a really, really good sign. There's just something missing though, in the half court. Like I'm going to have him like in the late lottery of my draft board, but there's just like that one small kind of tightening up his handle or being able to shoot it at an actual consistent rate.
Yeah, I tend to agree. He's going to have a really hard time creating offense. But the point about getting transition points is right on. He's really great about pushing the ball. He's accurate with his outlet passes and hit-aheads and stuff like that, which is nice.
Let's go on ahead and talk about Wendell Carter now. I really liked a lot of what I saw from him. He's a really instinctive passer. He makes these little plays that don't show up in the box score but are exceptionally important. Like there was one play where Trevon Duval had the ball in the left corner and Carter just kind of like carved out a bunch of space on the baseline, either to try and get a post up where he's had the guy pinned against his back and was going to have an open look at the rim, ended up driving. Trevon ends up driving, and he gets this wide open layup just because Carter instinctively knew to clear out that space for his point guard to drive. Right. Just the little things that kind of stick out off the page. He was good protecting the rim, I felt, in the middle of the defense, in the middle of that zone. I'm still pretty concerned about him moving his feet laterally in space, but that's something that he's absolutely going to have to prove that he's to play this zone defense. I don't know if he'll be able to, but I am cautiously optimistic about a lot of what Wendell Carter does, even if the numbers like 3 for 9 from the field tonight didn't necessarily portray that.
Yeah, he's interesting. I don't know that I love how Duke is using him right now.
On offense, you mean?
I just don't know that he gets a lot of opportunities. If I'm being totally honest, like, I think I've watched 2 of their 3 games, 3 of their 3 games, whatever it is. But just like, he's someone who gets lost for me a lot in the shuffle because he's just not particularly involved, and he doesn't stand out like Marvin Bagley does in terms of the motor and aggression and getting towards the getting rebounds and stuff like that. And so he's someone who slips a little bit for me. It's clear, I think, that the skill level is there for him to be super interesting as a prospect. I kind of wonder where he ultimately fits in the modern NBA. Like, if he seems like he's probably an okay rim protector and like questionable defending the perimeter. So, like, what is he offensively then? And it's like, maybe he can shoot, but we haven't really seen that yet, at least in college, right now at least.
Yeah, I think he'll be able to shoot at some point. I don't think it's consistent yet, but he'll be okay there. He strikes me as kind of the perfect backup center in the NBA for distinctive matchups, and maybe that undersells his skill level a little bit because he's really, really skilled. But until we can see that he can actually move on the perimeter and not be a liability in screens, I'm a little bit worried. You mentioned the way that Coach K is using him on offense. I hardly really using him in post-ups right now, it seems like. Yeah. I was screaming it like my screen saying, okay, he has Nick Ward on him. He's so much more skilled than Nick Ward. He's so much more mobile than Nick Ward. Just put Nick Ward in ball screens all the time with Carter and Trevon Duval. This is not hard. And there was 2 plays in a row where it happened to open the second half, and then Izzo took Carling, who was a lot better at defending screens, and then they just kind of went away from that totally. Right. For the rest of the game, even though Nick Ward played a bunch of minutes in the second half. So it is just kind of little stuff like that does frustrate me.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if they do anything with him. I mean, I don't think he's going to get the same treatment that Bagley will in terms of some opportunities to create his own offense and stuff. Yeah.
Let's go to Michigan State. There are 2 guys on Michigan. Jaren Jackson, I think, is the guy that everyone is so excited about, and I tend to agree with that. Cole and I mentioned on the podcast last night that we think he kind of is the guy below the top 5 players in this draft that actually has the ceiling to break into that top 5 level. Do you kind of agree with that after what you've seen from Jaren Jackson last night?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Or tonight?
When I did that mock draft last week, I had him 6, so I'm already pretty on the Jaren Jackson hype train. I think he's a really interesting prospect in terms of his ability to shoot it a little bit, even though the shot is not super pretty. Protect the rim. I think that he makes some boneheaded plays, he chases some blocks and commits some turnovers, and I'm not sure that he's always the strongest on the rebounding. But he's also I think one of the youngest freshmen in the class, and so he has a ton of leeway to grow. And it's really exciting to see that level of skill out of him already. I think he's great on weak side rim protection. He seems to move and cover ground really well. He recovers to shooters in ways that other big men I don't think really do. I don't know if the shooting motion is going to have to change for it to be consistent because he made shots in high school and he seems to be making shots now. But it does look really ugly. But I guess if it goes in, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that as he extends back to it's just a little bit off balance, and it's a push shot, and it can flatten out sometimes, and those are the shots that you kind of have to worry about whenever you're extending back the 3.5 extra feet to the NBA line. It gets tough. to do that. With Jackson, I echo everything that you said right there. Really, really good with weak side rim protection. I think he's still kind of developing his strength a little bit right now. Like, I think Miles Bridges is probably a better defensive rebounder than he is, just because he can kind of anchor his own position there. In terms of boneheaded decisions, yeah, whenever he tries to do too much passing the ball, I think that's where he gets into some trouble. Like, he had that one play tonight where he tried to throw like a left-handed bounce pass down to Nick Ward on the baseline when two Duke players were like crowding him right there. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Well on the perimeter. He's so athletic. He's already like 235 pounds. He's filling out his frame as we speak. And he's like has a 7'4" wingspan, so he can crash the offensive glass. The jump shot is working right now. He's explosive enough to finish well around the rim. To me, he's kind of the perfect modern day package for a center. He just kind of needs to make sure that he solidifies that jump shot going forward. And you mentioned about the youth, right? He's actually younger than guys like Cameron Reddish and Naz Reid and Anthony Simmons, guys who are seniors in high school this year. Who will be high draft picks next year. He's younger than those guys even. So you're talking about a guy that, for me, the ceiling is the roof. So, like, shout out Michael Jordan, but that's kind of what we're talking about here.
I'm really excited to see him play the rest of the year. And I think he's their best NBA prospect by a lot.
I don't know if by a lot, and I think that might be kind of a good way to transition to Miles Bridges here. Bridges had a weird night. Bridges seemed quiet for a lot of the evening. He does end up with 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks, and it's a really good stat sheet night. I don't know that it was a really good night in general for him. He really seemed stymied by the Duke zone. He didn't really 10 threes in this game when that's not really his game. He wants to pump fake and kind of attack off the bounce and get into the teeth of the defense and make plays for his teammates that way. And obviously that doesn't really work in zones all the time, but on some level, I would have liked to have seen Michigan State try to involve him in other ways, kind of run him along the baseline. They started to do that like midway through the second half, but I would have liked to have seen it earlier to try and maybe get him free for kind of get him engaged a little bit more. I think that probably 7 or 8 minutes into the second half of this game, he still only had like 5 field goal attempts.
Yeah.
So it was a weird night.
Yeah, I agree. At some point, he just decided to start hoisting any 3-point attempt he got from the right side of the arc. And, like, they just were going in. And that's totally fine. But I think I had kind of 2 takeaways about Bridges tonight. And a lot of them have to do with his transition to playing small forward, because I'm really intrigued with how that's going to go. I thought last year he fit really well as a small ball power forward for Michigan State.
Yep.
And so I've been really intrigued just by what it's going to be like for him to transition into the small forward role and what's going to change about his game. The point about taking 10 threes is something that echoes with me a lot, because I haven't seen a ton in his early games of him really creating offense, getting to the rim on his own yet. I don't think that Michigan State put him in a lot of ball screen actions tonight. They've been hesitant, it seems like, to make him a pick and roll ball handler ever. And I just worry about whether or not that creation is ever going to come in a meaningful way. And that's something that concerns me. Defensively tonight, the other thing that I noticed, and this is just like a really random thing, he bites on pump fakes a lot. Just like anytime anybody, Gary Trent got him like 2 or 3 times. And it's just like anytime somebody pump fakes him, he just goes flying past. And I
he's
think
over-aggressive
really
to fault sometimes.
Yeah. But that just for some reason stuck out to me tonight as a thing that I thought was a problem.
And you know what? Like, sometimes that over-aggression helps him. I think it helps him as a weak side rim protector. Like, he's kind of a legit weak side rim protector at 6'6" with like a 6'9" wingspan, which is really rare. That explosiveness really holds up. Duke did a really good job of limiting them in transition, I thought, tonight, which is a place where NBA teams are going to struggle to kind of hold him in check in transition just because of the expanded offensive zone, how far rebounds end up kind of bouncing in the NBA. There's just more opportunity for transition at that level. I still think that Bridges' best fit is going to be as more of a like role player, connector, like guy who can play the 3 and the 4. He'll probably I think he'll be a starter.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess my thing with him is we've gotten to where tweener is not a negative word, but I really do struggle to see with him the good of playing him either at the 3 or at the 4. Does that make sense? Like, if he plays the 3, I'm not sure that he can create enough to be offensively effective. Well, that makes sense then to play him at the 4, but if he plays the 4, I'm not sure that he's good enough defensively because he doesn't have elite length. And so I think that there could be some problems there. I tend to think he's better as kind of the small ball 4 in most lineups. And that his athleticism will make up for some of that lack of length and stuff. But I have growing questions just about what position he plays in the NBA in a way that I'm not sure that he can be great at either.
He'll be able to play some 3 here and there, and I think that that's kind of where the connector kind of piece comes together. Yeah. But to me, he's more of a 4, and the reason that I say that I think he can actually be a 4 in the NBA is that he has a lot of actual body strength. Like, physical strength is like a really vastly underrated thing that people don't talk enough about whenever like project. Physical body strength really matters in not being a guy that 4s can post up as mismatches, and as a guy who can hold his own on the block when trying to grab defensive rebounds. Like, he can do that pretty well too. He's also a pretty good weak side rim protector, which is kind of an important aspect of being a small ball 4 in the NBA. I don't mind him as a small ball 4 in the NBA.
I think that's a reasonable take. I feel very comfortable. I think I feel more comfortable saying that he should be a small ball 4 than a 3 in the NBA, just because of a lot of those things that you just outlined. The rim protection, the strength. He really is like a big dude. If you're ever close to him, like, he's bulky. Yeah, even after losing some weight.
Yeah, huge dude. We'll talk about, I think Kevin Knox is the best place to start. He goes for 20 and 7 tonight, 8 of 13 from the field, knocked down his first 3 3-point attempts on the evening. I think he is going to be a really good shooter one day. Do you buy
more now than I did? Yeah. I thought the shot looked pretty good today. I think the fact that he's long enough to get it over contests is really impressive and interesting. I am not sure where I think he, kind of on the positional spectrum where he fits, but I do think that the shot will probably come along.
If you don't know, he's a 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. And I tend to agree, but I'm not sure he agrees. So we'll see.
That's a great point. That is a very important point.
It was interesting. Somebody tried to get at him today about just like why the shot was falling today and why it didn't in the first couple of games. And it's like, I just got to keep shooting. And it's like, well, that's kind of unhelpful. But I do think that the shot looks good today. It's super intriguing. I think that of Kentucky's prospects, Kevin Knox is the person who has the clearest path to kind of see what he can be, if that makes sense. Like, he can definitely be a versatile defender. He probably is going to end up being a really good shooter. And he's somebody who I think with some practice will be able to attack closeouts and get into the lane. He's already got a little bit of a floater. I don't know that he's great at actually like forcefully getting to the rim yet. I think he settles for that floater a decent amount. But I think of their players or of their prospects, he has the clearest path to being something useful in the NBA. And that, I think, kind of matters. Like, it's easy to see where his upside lies.
Yeah, like, for me, he's pretty clear, like, after the, like, Jaren Jackson, Colin Sexton, maybe you throw Bruce Brown into that mix, but I think he's probably right there with Bruce Brown, too. Like, for me, he is their best NBA player.
Yeah, that's a little higher than I had him. But the more that I watch him and kind of see the clear path to the upside, I think that'll probably make me move him up.
It's worth noting, too, that much like Jaren Jackson, he's another one of the really young kids in this class, too.
Yeah.
He's still definitely developing physically. Hamidou Diallo is another guy worth at least mentioning here. Hami, his feel for the game scares me so much.
Yeah, he's committed so many charges in the games of theirs that I've watched already this season. Like, he just runs into dudes.
You know what? I was the right side of the floor where he was driving baseline. I thought that was a bullshit call.
That's fair. The feel for the game stuff extends beyond that too. Like, he just takes so many bad shots. Just like a ton of long twos that don't look good. The jumper's not there. the athleticism and the length and all physical tools are a really intriguing package. And there are times when that stuff hits you in the face, like when he jumped the passing lane and got out in transition for a huge dunk. Like, that looks really good. The rest of it is really difficult to figure out just like where he's going to fit, because he's not going to be somebody I don't think he's going to be somebody who can dominate the ball, which means he needs to be able to shoot, but like he doesn't really seem anywhere close to being good at shooting yet. If there's like a silver lining, he was 6 for 7 from the free throw line, and that's kind of nice. But yeah, I think the feel for the game question is real with him in terms of, you know, the decision making, both in terms of shooting and dribbling with the ball. I thought at one point like there was just nobody on Kentucky who could dribble, and he was one of those people.
He definitely struggles with dribbling right now. The decision making is what scares me, man. Like he has so many tools. The decision making, it's hard for me to see how he steps onto an NBA floor right now and is successful.
Yeah, and the two overlap. Like, can't shoot, takes bad shots still, and it's just like, what are you doing? And like, for some reason, it seems like they think he can shoot. I don't know. Like, he takes a lot of shots.
Oh, well, no. Like, John Calipari had a rule in their preseason games that, like, if he shot a three, he came out.
Tonight. Like, I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah. Listen up, Hoops fans. Basketball season is back, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to action, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends. They've got beginner leagues, casual skill levels. The best part, you get to draft a new team every day, and drafting a team is the best part of fantasy sports. The only thing better is winning cash when you can do it. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Don't wait. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to end tonight. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Do any of Kentucky's big guys intrigue you based off of what you saw tonight?
No. I had a point on Twitter with somebody about Nick Richards, and I was like, the nicest thing I can say about him is that he sets some nice screens. It is a nice skill.
That's a nice skill to have, but like
Graham on a couple of screens, and Graham's usually really pretty decent fighting through those screens, and so like that's a good skill. But I'm just not sure what else he brings. And somebody else pointed out on Twitter that Svi Mikhailuk is younger than Nick Richards. I'm like,
that's true.
Pretty weird. And so I'm not really sure that he's intriguing. PJ Washington, if we're going to call him a big, is like something. He is. Like, he's probably a power forward, and he's something, but like I just continue to see that guy make bad decisions with the basketball. In each of the last 2 games, he's just like thrown some pass into the middle of the crowd. And I just don't see it with him really yet. I don't know if there's any Sasha Kalea-Jones interest. Like, he hit some 18-footers tonight that were really intriguing. He's not. It doesn't have.
I'll say this. I'll go to bat for Sasha. Sasha can hit mid-range shots, and he battles. You know what I mean? Like, he and as his frame continues to fill out, I can see him becoming an intriguing basketball player. He's long. He, blocked 3 shots tonight as well. He just gets bullied all the time. And if he puts on weight and puts on some explosiveness, I actually think he can potentially be an NBA player. Like, I would have zero problem with taking him in the second round right now.
Yeah, I agree.
If he was available.
I agree with that. I think he's interesting.
Like Nick Richards, I don't know if I would take.
Definitely slipping on that guy. I just don't really see it. And I'm not sure that I've seen it yet with PJ Washington. Sasha Kalea-Jones was definitely the most intriguing person to me tonight. If he can make that 18-footer on a consistent basis, that's super interesting.
Yeah, PJ Washington I think is fine. He didn't play super well tonight. I think that some people have him as like a top 40 guy in this class. Yeah. I'm not quite that high on him. I've seen quite a few different people have him as like a first-round pick. I've never really gotten that appeal with him. I'm not a big fan of project bigs in general, though, so maybe that's why. Any of the point guards like Quade Green, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, anything?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is kind of interesting just because of the length. Like, he clearly bothered Devontae Graham all night, and whatever we think of Devontae Graham as an NBA prospect, he is a really good college guard. He's a good scorer. He creates space really well in terms of getting his jumper off, and I thought that Gilgeous-Alexander did a really good job of bothering him. I don't really know what he does offensively yet. He had 6 turnovers tonight, for example, 3 assists. I'm not sure that there's any of that there yet, but the defensive package is interesting. Quade Green, nothing really there intrigues me yet as an NBA player, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Quade. Shai might be interesting at one point. He's not quite there yet, though. Speaking of Canadians, I've been much more impressed with Nickeil Alexander-Walker than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think Nikhil's probably going to be a first-round pick. Shai, I'm questionable will reach that level at some point. Kansas, real quick. People, 20-year-old senior. How interested were you in him after tonight, where he led Kansas in scoring?
I don't know. I always have a soft spot in my heart for him, just because I feel like he could be used better by Kansas than he is. Like, we've seen some interesting stuff with him in international competitions where he handles the ball, gets to the basket, and does some interesting things, and he's just never really put in those positions with Kansas. I think that they've done a really good job of turning him into a good 3-point shooter, even though he was only 3 of 10 from 3 tonight. I do think that they've done a good job with that. And I thought tonight we saw a little bit more of the getting to the rim and doing some floater stuff in the mid-range and stuff like that. But he's still 20 years old, but I'm not sure that he's developed a ton yet in ways that you probably would have hoped to see him develop over 4 years of playing basketball in college. And so I think that is kind of a concern.
No problem stashing in the last 15 picks of the draft and saying go over to a EuroLeague team and develop, and if you turn into something great.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right with him.
Devontae Graham is someone who terrified me tonight.
Yeah, really bad game.
I had Graham as a top... Yeah, I had him as a top 50 guy in this class kind of coming into the year. I'm pretty skeptical. Not just like a lot of the concerns I had about him coming into the year bore themselves out tonight. He had a shitty shooting night. He's not going to shoot 1 for 6 from 3 most nights. I think that maybe kind of played into a lot of different stuff for him. It played into how his overall game went. What scares me about him is that he just doesn't have, to me, the consistent of the defense and make plays. And I think that the length for Kentucky tonight, particularly on the wing with Shai Alexander, and even Quade, I think got in his grill a reasonable amount when they were on, or when he was guarded by Quade. It scares me that he can't, as a senior, he'll be a 23-year-old, I think, when he's drafted, that he still can't get past these young kids that really, really poor mechanics defensively, at least.
Yeah, I think if I were, coming into the season, the thing that I was more concerned with him was that, getting to the rim, getting to the basket, because he's never done that on a consistent basis, than it was, say, I know a lot of people were concerned, can he be a point guard and pass? I've never had any concerns about that. The kid can definitely pass. He might be a little reckless with it sometimes and throw some lazy passes, and, he had 5 turnovers tonight that were obviously terrible. But he also had, 2 or 3 dump-offs where he got to the rim and, wrapped around somebody and just dropped it for Udoka Azubuike, and you were just wait a second, that's pretty impressive. So, but I think that the point about getting to the rim is really a big concern with him, because I don't think he can do it at a consistent basis. Now, maybe he's enough to be a backup guy who can come in and shoot it a little bit and play either guard position or something, because I think he does compete on defense. I think he can pass a little bit. And he's a heck of a shooter, but I agree with you that I came away with some serious concerns about his ability to be somebody who gets into the lane. And if college basketball people are listening, if they want to follow a Kansas stat, just figure out how many shots at the rim their guards are taking, because that's, I think, going to be a big difference maker for them.
Speaking of guards taking shots at the rim, Malik Newman and LeGerald Vick. I've seen LeGerald Vick kind of popping up on draft boards a little bit. I mean, do you have any interest?
I have more interest in LeGerald Vick than I do in Malik Newman. I'm not really sure what Malik Newman is going to be good at in the NBA, which is interesting because Kansas is going to have some guards come in next year, and like if he's still around, it's going to be awkward. LeGerald Vick is intriguing. Tonight I thought was one of the worst games I've seen him play. He took a bunch of really terrible mid-range shots, which is usually not something he does. But if you kind of look across the box score, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, like that's intriguing. He's active. Yeah. He's been a better defender this year than he was last year. Last year he was atrocious. And so I think that
he looks more bulky than what he was last year. He was really skinny last year.
I think that there's some intrigue there. I don't think it'll be this year that there's much intrigue there, but I think that like after next year he could be somebody who finds his way into the draft. I really just don't see a path for Malik Newman right now.
It's in Billy Preston's car.
I have every interest in knowing what kind of car Billy Preston was driving. Yes.
That's basically the only thing I want to know about Kansas right now. What kind of car was Billy Preston driving that just now Kansas has decided, we need to look into this?
How did he get this car that he wrecked? Who knows?
That was one of the weirdest statements I've ever seen. Like, I've never seen somebody explicitly say in a statement the thing that they're looking at in that way.
I love it.
Very weird. And the phrasing of just like, we have to look at the financial value of the vehicle specifically or something, and it was just like, what?
I don't know, man.
Wait, one quick question. Have you changed your opinion on Udoka Azubuike at all?
I didn't figure it out.
I mean, like, he'll be a fine college player this year, but...
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I mean, like, I don't... Do you see, like, what world does he have a path to the end every single play?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that at this point. He has slimmed down and he moves better than he did, but I don't think he's going to be able to guard those.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think he had a really good game tonight. I think he's going to be a very useful piece. Maybe I did underrate him a little bit as a useful piece for Kansas this year. I think that is probably true. As an NBA prospect, I mean, come on.
I am definitely not sure that Kansas has any good NBA prospects, but they have a bunch of really good college players, and we'll see where that goes.
They do. Chris, tell the people where they can find your work so we can get out of here and you can go to bed.
You can find my work on Fansided and some NBA draft stuff over at Sporting News. You can also check me out on Twitter at CStoneHoops.
I enjoy having him on the show all the time. I enjoy talking to him and bouncing ideas off of him regularly. You should go follow him, like he said, at CStoneHoops. This has been Sam Vicini and the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on iTunes. This was just kind of a spur-of-the-moment podcast just because I had some thoughts that I wanted to get out there, and we ended up, just because we had 3 people at the event for The Athletic, deciding not to kind of go through spec reports or anything. So I just wanted to get some takes out there, and I appreciate you guys all for listening. We'll be back at some point later in the week. I'm recording another podcast tomorrow. I doubt it will be released on Wednesday going into Thursday, probably more Thursday going into Friday. But thank you all for listening, and until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.